有请本次大会主持人、中国科协副主席、书记处书记孟庆海先生上场。Let's welcome the host of today's conference, Zhang Boli, the Vice President.
尊敬的工科主席
President 工科
张伯礼院士、
Academician
环
Zhang
境鹏
Boli,
书记、
Secretary 怀
尊
进鹏
敬的各位来宾、
Distinguished
各位
guests,
专家、
experts,
学者、
and
女
scholars,
士们、
ladies
先
and
生们、
gentlemen,
朋友们，
dear friends,
大家好。
good afternoon.
由中国科学技术学会主办、世界公众科学素质组织筹备委员会成员单位积极参与
And
联
also
合国
supported
教科
by
文组织、
UNESCO,
国际科学理事会、
International Council
世
for
界
Science,
工程组织
World
联合会
Federation of
和
Engineering
发展中国家科
Organizations,
学院
and the World Academy of Science. Now I would like to announce the 2020 World Conference on Science Literacy now begins.
2020年是一个极不平凡的一年。
The year 2020 is an extraordinary year.
全球蔓延，
The global pandemic is accelerating. The human society is undergoing a profound changes unseen in a century.
和产业变革
And also we witness the technological revolution. We are striving for an innovation.
结构，
We are reshaping the world economy,
百年
and the world is
人类社会
witnessing
比
profound changes. And the human society, more than ever,
基础解决方案
need scientific solutions.
难的有力，
Science is the weapon to conquer the pandemic. This is also a common consensus.
让公众用科学知识
So we have to let the public better understand the scientific knowledge, improve their science literacy, and respond to the crises and challenges rationally.
2018年首届
Since the first World Conference on Science Literacy was held in 2018,
科技界
institutions, organizations,
和机构、组织及专家
experts and scholars in science and technological sectors around the world have been united to establish an effective communication network. Bear the important mission of improving global public service literacy in mind, multilateral exchanges have been conducted to actively promote the establishment of a collaborative mechanism to improve the public science literacy and carry out practical cooperation. As an important agenda, the preparatory committee for the World Literacy Conference was officially established. It also showed a solid step for us to promote the science literacy. And today, we will center on promoting the science literacy and share experiences to fight against COVID-19. And also, we will promote the establishment of a collaborative mechanism so that we can better deal with the crisis that we face in the future. In addition to leaders and guests attending the conference on site, there are also guests from the international organization, including the International Academy of Science, Twas, OWSD, as well as guests from 20 national and regional science and technology organizations. Here, on behalf of the organizers, I would like to deliver our warm welcome and heartfelt thanks to all the guests participating in this conference. Now let's give a warm applause to welcome the Vice Chairman of the CPPCC National Committee and the President of China Association for Science and Technology, Mr. Wang, to deliver a speech.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. Today, at the opening of the 2020 World Conference on Scientific Literacy, we are once again focusing on improving scientific literacy across the globe by sharing views, exchanging ideas, and encouraging consultations and cooperation. On behalf of China Association for Science and Technology, I would like to extend a warm welcome to all the distinguished guests attending the conference. I would also like to express my heartfelt thanks to UNESCO, the International Science Council, the World Federation of Engineering Organizations, and the Twas for their great support for this conference. In October this year, the 5th plenary session of the 19th CPC Central Committee was held. We focus on to promote the well-rounded human development and to make a significant improvement in people's cultural and scientific literacy. And we also would like to see a wider, deeper, and high-level opening up. The Chinese scientists will be more active in participating in the world communication to pursue high-level open cooperation. The COVID-19 is accelerating and also caused a profound changes, which hugely threat the safety and health of people around the world. The world economy, science, security, politics, we're also seeing a big, profound changes in all these areas, which have sent the world into a time of turbulence and transformation. Such are the unprecedented challenges and tests in the work and the life of mankind. Looking to the future, it is imperative for us to firmly grasp the general trend of mutual support and united cooperation in face of challenges. We talk about science actually has its nature. So we need to follow that nature, and we talk about science actually a shared asset for all. We should respect facts and also respect science, so which require us to give a full play to the leading role of innovation in delivering development and achieving a sustainable development. Therefore, we talk about a fundamental role of the scientific literacy in underpinning development. We are living in a fast-changing era of science and technology. A comprehensive improvement on scientific literacy has already served as the supporting condition for social development, and also the fundamental basis for nurturing innovation, cultivating talent, and coping with risks and challenges. Therefore, it is fair to say that to keep improving public scientific literacy is a great cause with strategic significance. As we speak, the coronavirus is still causing havoc in many places. The fight against the virus in solidarity has made the international community of science and technology further understand the importance of promoting the scientific literacy of all countries to enhance the capability of beating the pandemic scientifically and respond to the crises and challenges. Therefore, we should advance our cooperation exchanges to build and also promote the further progress of the scientific literacy. For that to happen, first, we need to hold the multilateral dialogue. Right now, we look at the multilateral dialogue actually is really required. A lot of the consensus reached before are actually right now facing a big dot or went wasted. Therefore, need to be open-minded and break that zero-sum concept in order to realize a common development, and also would like to see the people-to-people multilateral exchange and communication. The scientific and technology community should respect life and treat each other equally, and also stay open and inclusive, and also to build a platform for communication between the bilateral and the multilateral level, and at the regional and the global scale, we would like to see a strengthened dialogue and cooperation on major issues such as improving scientific literacy. And also would like to conduct constructive exchanges and mutual learning of each other's development philosophy and practical exchanges in order to reach the mutual trust and respect. Second, we need to stay committed to open cooperation. In front of the pandemic, we realize that we are intertwined of our future. So in front of this big crisis, any country, any individual could not stay immune. Therefore, we should learn more about each other country's development strategy of scientific literacy of every country. And also we should seize the opportunity for cooperation that comes with the potential unleashed from the development strategy, and also seek the new cooperation opportunities in these threats. Therefore, the strengths of talent and the intelligence of the community should be fully leveraged, and we should also lay out a strategic planning for an open and inclusive cooperation and set up projects featuring reciprocity and sharing in order to provide a more impetus to common progress in scientific literacy through open cooperation. Third, we need to pursue common development of our world. We talk about the climate change, food security threats, the biodiversity. All these actually are a global crisis in front of all countries that also threaten the people's life and health. Therefore, we should follow and adhere to the sustainable development and also stay to the spirit of respecting the science, and also to come up that the synergy and the consensus, and also mobilize the resources available. And also we should stay inclusiveness in order to furnish the rich fruits of development to all people. In particular, more supports through the Go to Developing Countries in helping science, communication, and popularization in the developing countries so as to improve their scientific literacy of the people there. They bridge the gap in scientific literacy and ensure that the world actually enjoy a share of the benefits and promote long-term development. CAS, as the world's largest community of science and technology, is committed to promoting well-rounded human development and value realization, continuing to carry out campaigns of science popularization to promote the progress of scientific literacy in China. At the same time, actively adhering to the concept of building a community of shared future for mankind, we also would like to see the more cooperation happen. Especially, we also would like to see the people-to-people exchange happen in this regard. The Chinese scientific and technology workers stand ready to work with our colleagues around the globe to continue our endeavors in combating the virus, promoting global economic recovery, advancing public scientific literacy, and also to deepen our people-to-people exchange, and also expand pragmatic cooperation and make contribution to a community of shared future for mankind, deliver the UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, and make our world a better place. Wish this conference a complete success. Thank you. Thank you, President Wang, for his excellent remarks. As he mentioned, that the COVID-19 pandemic once again proved that actually our future are intertwined. As Mr. Wang mentioned, that we should uphold the cooperation mechanism and at a multilateral level and work together to build a community and also make greater contribution to the fight against the pandemic and promote economic recovery by promoting the global public science literacy and make more practical exploration for building a community with a shared future for mankind. President Wang's speech represents our common aspiration. Thank you, Mr. Wang, again. This year's conference received a great support from the UNESCO, the Internet Council for Science, the World Federation of Engineering Organizations, and Twas. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, some organizations are unable to deliver a speech on site, so they have sent a video message to express their support and congratulations. First of all, we would like to invite Assistant Director General of UNESCO, Madame Samuel Beduel, to deliver a speech.
Dear colleagues, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm deeply honored to address you today on behalf of the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, based in Paris. 75 years on, UNESCO has attached much great importance to science literacy and to science itself. Importance of scientific literacy is evident now more than ever. People are looking to science for answers to control this COVID-19 pandemic. Therefore, UNESCO congratulates President Wang of the China Association for Science and Technology, CAST, for organizing this conference for exchange in science literacy. UNESCO is delighted to partner with CAST in this forum. Ladies and gentlemen, scientific literacy is extremely important in the world today. UNESCO strengthens science literacy throughout its intergovernmental and international scientific programs, networks of research institutes, and all the affiliated centers of UNESCO in the natural sciences, science and technology, natural resource management, water, ecological, earth science, and biodiversity. UNESCO also enhances science, technology, engineering, and mathematics education at all levels. This STEM education is indeed instrumental to raise and increase public awareness, understanding of science literacy. UNESCO also conducts an informal science education programs. For example, the UNESCO China Association of Natural Museums have an agreement to promote science culture in the Belt and Road Initiative countries. We have witnessed throughout this pandemic that science literacy is extremely important to control the spread of the coronavirus. UNESCO has held a number of high-level meetings, online workshops, meetings to bring science closer to society and better understand how to combat the pandemic. In understanding the scientific literacy, a number of important points have emerged. First, we need to improve the dialogue among scientists, governments, and citizens to warrant trust in science. We need to increase national capacities for evidence-based policy making. We need to share knowledge in time to accelerate the pace of research, critical to combat the disease. But we're also living in an independent and interconnected world, so we need to strengthen international scientific collaboration. And finally, the role of science journalists in this process is key and can help to bridge the science policy society nexus, so that we can inform policy decisions on COVID. So what has COVID taught us about scientific literacy? It has taught us something extremely important, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. We live in an era of constant scientific discovery. Therefore, a basic understanding of science is vital for all of society in today's technological world. Our environment, our health, our well-being, our day-to-day lives revolve around an understanding of a number of science facts and concepts. So understanding the physical, natural world around us requires us to have a firm grasp of science literacy. So what can we do today as UNESCO, multilateral system of the United Nations? What can we all do as scientific counterparts in this equation? So in 75 years, UNESCO promotes an integrated scientific research agenda to better understand the world, to identify the boundaries and the tipping points, to better understand the impacts of climate change and biodiversity. A scientific literate society is one which is able to use and openly access the advances of science, harness its benefits, and understand its insights. Science literacy promotes a scientific culture and involves citizens, communities, and policymakers. Dear colleagues, science has value only if we know where to find it, what to do with it, how to use it, how to select it, how to integrate it into a system for human and planet well-being. The new modes of digital communication today, by the social media, have called for a new modality of scientific literacy and science literacy. UNESCO is committed to disseminate scientific knowledge for the benefit of societies. Once again, UNESCO expresses its deep appreciation to CAST for hosting such a timely event. I wish you fruitful collaborations, and UNESCO looks forward to working with you and joining you in this new journey of science literacy. Thank you, and wishing fruitful collaborations.
Thank you, Ms. Shamila Bouduel, for her remarks, and thanks for the support from UNESCO. Next, please welcome Director of the Science Division of the International Council for Science, Matthew Dennis, to deliver a speech.
On behalf of Daya Reddy, the President of the International Science Council, it is my pleasure to have the opportunity to say a few words at the opening of the 2020 World Conference on Science Literacy. My name is Matthew Denis. I am Science Director of the International Science Council. This conference takes place in quite a unique context, and clearly the COVID-19 pandemic is having a tremendous impact on our lives, on our health, on our economies, on our values, and therefore it's affecting also the public perception of the role that science has and must play in our societies. How many articles have we read in the past year? How many discussions have we had on viruses? I mean, by now, many of us are probably convinced that they could apply for a job at the World Health Organization. But more seriously, what COVID-19 shows us is how critical science education, science literacy is for our societies. If we are to address global challenges such as climate change as successfully as we are responding to the current pandemic, then better science literacy is a necessity. The question then is, how do we improve science literacy? And we at the ISC will be very attentive to the contributions, the inputs made by the participants to the World Conference in that matter. I am personally convinced that the Beijing Declaration on Science Literacy gives us a very strong basis for joint reflections and joint actions. First of all, because it states very clearly that science literacy is about science, natural, social, human, technology, and their relationships with society. And that is vital, that is critical. Second of all, the Beijing Declaration states also very clearly that science literacy is about embracing the diversity of scientific perspectives. And here, to use some of Richard Nisbet's metaphors, one could say that science literacy is about embracing and combining circles and lines. It's about understanding the richness of holistic approaches, typically associated with East Asian thinking and symbolized by the circle, and understanding the richness of analytical approaches associated with Western thinking and symbolized by the line. So, colleagues, friends, let me end here. I would like to thank the Chinese Associations for Science and Technology for inviting the International Science Council to become a partner in this important event. And let me convey to you once again our warmest wishes for a successful World Conference on Science Literacy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Matthew Dennis, for your speech, and thanks for the support from International Council for Science. This conference is also supported by the World Federation of Engineering Organizations, the President of WFEO, and the Commission of China Academy of Engineering. Professor Gong Ke is here with us. Let's welcome President Gong Ke to deliver his speech.
Dear colleagues, on behalf of the World Federation of Engineering Organizations, WFEO in short, I would like to extend our heartiest congratulations to the 2020 World Conference of Science Literacy, hosted by CAST. As we continue our journey to the end of this very special year, we still have before us a serious challenges just like COVID-19 pandemic that has laid bare the vulnerabilities in many countries across social, economic, and the medical sphere. On every front line of combating this deadly pandemic, innovations through science, technology, and engineering have played crucial roles. As the pandemic continues to influence every profile of people's life across the world, it is urgent to accelerate scientific innovation and to carry out science-based social measures in fighting against the pandemic, which requires widely support from the public. To this end, the science literacy of public, and especially for decision makers, are of vital importance. Scientists and engineers are obligated to help promoting science literacy of all. They are responsible to promote public awareness of scientific facts, concepts, and process. They are responsible to answer public concerns and answer their questions, and to be accountable for public trust so that they can win public innovation. This responsibility should not only be shouldered by scientists and engineers as individuals, but more by scientific community. WFEO highly values the efforts of CAST on advancing science literacy and would like to join our hands with CAST to promote public knowledge and capability in fighting against the pandemic and to coping with various threats and risks faced by humankind, to transform our world by implementing the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals and to build back better from the pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. President Gong Ke. Improving public science literacy and promoting human development have fully recognized and strong support by the developing countries. Now I would like to give the floor to Professor Moranzi, Executive Director of Twas.
Distinguished and friends of the scientific community, good afternoon from Trieste, Italy. My name is Romain Moranzi, and I'm the Executive Director of Twas, the World Academy of Sciences, for the advancement of science in the developing world. We are honored today to be playing a role in this key initiative with our friends at CAST, the China Association for Science and Technology, who are important allies in important efforts such as advancing science literacy in Africa. This conference takes place as the world is still battling the global COVID-19 pandemic, now in its second wave. When it comes to the impact of this pandemic, education has not been spared. Schools and universities have been closed, impacting over 60% of the world's student population. And the disruptions to our knowledge delivery systems will also create a ripple effect, felt across all sectors, including economic growth and poverty reduction. As we face this reality, we must urgently consider the importance of science literacy in the wider society. When the world was transitioning from the Millennium Development Goals to the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, Twas joined in the process to give shapes to these new goals. At the time, I also wrote an editorial in our Twas newsletters on the importance of science for all people, touching on the importance of science literacy. As I wrote in that piece, if people do not understand the basic science of germs, they will be less likely to wash their hands. If a community does not understand the cause and impact of climate change, each people will be less likely to take remedial action. Science and public understanding of science are clearly crucial in addressing the great challenges of our time and for developing the innovation system. Therefore, shouldn't we all strive to support science literacy for every nation and every community? Shouldn't we advocate for science for all people? It is for all these reasons that I personally want to extend my deepest and most sincere congratulations to the China Association for Science Technology, in particular to the conference organizing committee for your incredible efforts toward this event. Your work in promoting science literacy has the potential to make a crucial difference, and I look forward to seeing the outcomes of the multilateral dialogue sessions planned during this event. I wish you a most interesting and engaging event. Thank you.
I would like to thank Twas and Professor Moranzi for his endorsement and trust. Once again, I would like to thank the A4 international organizations for their great support and participation. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, in view of grave challenges, we need to stand together, stay united, and work together. Only by doing so can we gain triumph and success over the pandemic. According to the agenda, the following will be a keynote speech session. We have invited our special guests from different countries and fields to deliver their keynote speech. They will focus on the theme of this year's conference to share their experience and wisdom in fighting the pandemic through scientific and technological innovation and improving the public scientific literacy. First of all, let's welcome Academician Zhang Boli, member of the Chinese Academy of Engineering, for his keynote speech entitled Traditional Chinese Medicine, the Highlight of a Chinese Approach to Fight Against COVID-19 Pandemic. Mr. Zhang Boli is president of Tianjin University of Traditional Chinese Medicine, honorary president of the China Academy of Chinese Medical Science, and director of Department of Medical and Health of Chinese Academy of Engineering. He's a leading figure in the field of TCM. During the outbreak of COVID-19, he participated in the treatment at the front line in Wuhan and proposed the Chinese plan for diagnosis and treatment using both TCM and Western medicine, which was recognized by China and welcomed by the people. He was awarded the national honorary title of People's Hero in 2020. Let's welcome Academician Zhang Boli.
Dear President of the conference, dear friends, colleagues, good afternoon. So my report is Chinese traditional medicine, the highlight of Chinese approach to fight against COVID-19 pandemic. As of yesterday, we have registered over 62.3 million confirmed cases, 1.3 million death cases. Right now, the global pandemic is accelerating. Start from last year, the end of last year, since the outbreak of Wuhan epidemic, we take effective measures to contain the virus. With strong leadership of CPC Central Committee, all Chinese people have been united as one. And also we have very dedicated medical workers. They are adopting a science-based approach to fight against the COVID-19. In less than 3 months, we gained victory against COVID-19. Even though we still have some sporadic cases after Wuhan's outbreak, but we can control the virus. So for COVID-19, we all know it is an infection caused by pneumonia. Unfortunately, on October the 15th, the WHO have announced the results for some trials of some of the medicines. Unfortunately, all of those testings and the trials were failed. According to our understanding about the COVID-19, at the beginning, where we are at Wuhan, we are not sure and don't understand this new virus, and we have some clinical analysis for this virus. The first week, you could see the infection rate is very high. But that is the best time for us to cure the patients. After the first week, the immunity system may cause a second invasion. If we do not cure the patients in this phase, or if patients with underlying disease, and these people will turn from severe condition to critical condition. So now we have gained an understanding about the projection of the disease. On top of that, we have come up with a strategy to combine the use of TCM and the Western medicine. So we compare COVID-19 to SARS, we could see the transmission is stronger, and also there are many symptoms associated of COVID-19. It will actually damage the immune system. So it will not only damage the lungs, but also attack other organs. For example, some of the nerve system will be also damaged because of COVID-19. And for TCM, we have about 3,000 years of history. And it actually recorded in the historical records. If we look at the history, if we're tracing back this to different dynasties in the past 3,000 years, we have captured the procedure how we fight against different kinds of pandemics. So we have learned a lot of experiences, and we know how to use those traditional Chinese medicines. So for Western medicine, they have to understand the virus, but TCM focus more on the symptoms. Especially when the virus enter into the body, we have to understand the symptoms and the root causes. So when I first come to Wuhan, I formulated a handbook that captures the epidemiological investigations. We purchased 100 mobile phones and distribute these mobile phones to the frontline doctors. So this is how it looks. So in a very short time, we are able to understand the symptoms of the COVID-19 patients. So for the symptoms, So it actually reflects like the dampest evil, even though it's uneasy to notice, but we understand some of the features of this disease. So this photo actually shows some of the features for COVID-19 patients. But still, China is very large, so the symptom is not that similar in different places in China. So in the southern part of China, the northern part of China, patients may have different kind of symptoms. So we may have multiple symptoms for one patient. So we have divided the symptoms into 5 types: the mild types, the common type, severe type, critical type, and the recovery period. And for people with mild symptoms, we will use TCM. For normal cases, we will use the combination of TCM as well as the Western medicine. So actually, it takes a long time for the COVID-19 patient to recover. So that time, the virus do not have a transmission, but still, we still maybe see some filtration of the lungs. We still have to recover our patients. So during the recovery period, we also use the combination of TCM and Western medicine, and also we have gained a very good result. So in general, we have 4 stages at the beginning. We have 4 types of people. We have very strict screening procedures and put people into quarantine. So but still, after people stepping out from the quarantine, we do not have a very effective drug to treat these patients. So at that time, I think we have to use TCM to mitigate their symptoms. So we are saying it's better to use TCM to treat these patients. So we are using 1,000 pops to brew all of those TCMs, and we send those medicines to designated hospitals, the temporary hospitals. So before I leave Wuhan, I have to pay my bill for all of those TCM, and then they send me this. So you could see for the first day, they send out like 3,000 pieces, doses of the medicine. And at the peak time, they have to distribute around like 40,000 doses of the medicine. So this is one part of our efforts in fighting against COVID-19. So for people who are being isolated, we are also providing them with TCM. So for 4 groups of people, we have like 80% of them are like confirmed cases, but when it comes to late February, that figure drops to 30%. So actually, we curb the spread of the virus. When we come to the second stage, meaning that when people are getting infected, but it's very difficult to admit all of those patients. We have limited hospital capacity. We do not have enough beds to receive those patients. So academician Wang had proposed the idea to set up the makeshift hospital. So for mild cases, they will be sent to the makeshift hospitals, and then for the severe and critical cases, we will send them to designated hospital. In this way, we can balance our medical resources. So we have built altogether 14 makeshift hospitals. And I also propose we should let those patients in the makeshift hospitals take traditional medicine. And also we are organizing exercise for these patients, which also shows very good results. And for Jiangxia Makeshift Hospital, we have admitted 564 patients. 0 patients turning to severe cases. And this shift over rate is very low. So we have to make sure that these mild cases will not turn into severe cases, and then there will be no death. When it comes to the third stage, we have to consider how to treat those critical patients and severe patients. So for the Western medicine, they may probably use ECMO and the respiratory machines to support these patients. But if the oxygen rate is too low, this may have some impact to the physical condition of these patients. After giving them TCM, we can actually improve the blood oxygen ratio for these patients. So in the past, if we are using a lot of antibodies, antiviral drugs, it may cause some side effects. But if we use 血必净, this is very effective to control the virus and alleviate the symptoms for the patients. So when we are using the Western medicine to treat these patients, it's better that we use some of the mild traditional Chinese medicine to treat these patients. When we come to the fourth stage, for people who are in the recovery stage, we have established a protocol. And some of the patients, they will do some exercise and also providing some food therapy. We'll use a combination of treatments to help the patients recovered. After I leave Wuhan, I come back to Wuhan for several times. I found very few people have side effects or complications. And also, their symptoms will not relate to the severity of the COVID-19. And also, we have to pay attention to the mental condition of the patients. In January, when we come to Wuhan, we encourage the patients, you have to be confident, you will be cured. But actually, at that time, we are not that confident, because this is a new disease. We don't know the evolution of this kind of disease. So of course, we have to learn the lessons to sum up all the experiences. I visited some hospitals in Wuhan, and I found if we use a combination of TCM and Western medicine, that we can gain very good results for the treatment. And some of my articles are published. So we're addressing a sample of 52 cases. So we could see we can shorten the hospitalized days, and also these patients will turn back to negative in a faster time. It can also improve the cure rate and reduce the death rate. So by publishing these theses, it could actually boost the confidence for the medical workers. We could see some of the symptoms has been alleviated, and also some of the immunity index improved for the patients. Then we have gained a stronger confidence. But of course, at this time, we have to focus on some of the new medicines. So here I have put some of the traditional medicines here as approved by the Central Leading Group. We will screen all the traditional Chinese medicines in China, and also we identified 3 effective medicines to treat COVID-19, the 莲花清瘟 granule, the 金花清感 granule, and also 血碧镜. And also we are coming up with 3 subscriptions. And 宣肺败毒 is actually one of the drugs developed by myself. And we will improve the elements and address targeted symptoms of COVID-19. And we think the efficacy is very high. And for example, this could help to dissolve some of the symptoms, especially to dissolve the mucus in the small airway in the patients. If we are able to get the mucus out, and then it will help to improve the symptoms. So this is how we come up with this new 宣肺百毒 granule. We are also finding that this can hit all of the symptoms for the COVID-19 patients.
And we also found a total of 127 active ingredients could regulate 286 COVID-19 potential targets through 21 pathways after analyzing identified molecular structures. So we can tell this actually quite effective, especially regulating the cytokine storm. We talk about the cytokine storm actually is highly related to the protein or the IL-6. So that is also we talk about whether that can really help to improve the treatment rate and lower the mortality rate. So we also work on the network pharmacological research and also find a way that could improve people's lung condition. So we had the 4 different trials, and we also worked on the papers and published them, and also have 4 clinical trials. We had around 2,000 cases. So this is actually done by my team. All these actually follow the very strict scientific design, and also we actually have all these data stored and managed at our backstage system. So we talk about what is the standard or what is the indicators. We talk about actually the effects or what we were looking for. So we talk about actually we should curb the disease developed from the light condition to a severe condition. So we talk about the severe condition patients actually need to spend more than tens of thousands money to cure the disease, and actually we also all people actually die from this disease. Therefore, we talk about the key index that we want to improve the convention rate of mild to severe, and also reported to WHO, and we believe that this can be a good indicator to evaluate the clinical trials. So we conducted the RCT study on 164 cases to prove its efficacy. For the group of people with a severe condition, it also showed actually they shortened their days in the hospital and also improved the cure rate. The American FDA actually also issued a phase 2 clinical approval, and right now we also work with the American universities to further progress the clinical trials. And we talk about right now the COVID-19 become a global pandemic, so we also participate in the international conference to share our experience gained in Wuhan and in other places in China. So look at on the March 25th, actually I joined the 4 global conference, and actually one of the meeting actually we had 63 countries with 90,000 people online to learn more about the Chinese experience, especially experience with TCM. And we also actually signed the a TCM to Italy and Philippines to support them fight against COVID-19. And actually, we talk about the lessons we learned, and the State Council actually highly upheld the rule of the TCM, and it also helped that the leverage the unique strengths of TCM, and also the firm applause to TCM's role, because it helped to improve the cure rate and save more people's lives. So we talk about Wuhan, actually, it's a seafood market, and Beijing is also the Xinfadi seafood market. Same for Dalian and Qingdao. So we can see the common reason actually here is all related to the seafood market. So we talk about that the high-risk countries or regions like United States, Brazil, actually found there a frozen goods, including seafood, meat, and other products, showed the virus, because like the transportation for the cold chain, they were stored in the sealed atmosphere of a low temperature and a dampness. So we talk about actually virus right now, we should not only focus on the human beings right now, we also need to focus on the cold chain food package, because that would also cause people infected. So right now this is also the key and the lessons we learned. So in August this year, we also talked to the central government that we need to conduct a very stringent measures to clean all these imported frozen cold chain food. And today we actually reported a case from Chengdu, Henan, Anhui. Actually, we found the cases that the people got infected from these cold chain or from the items. So we talk about right now, it's not just people to people, the transmission right now. It's like people actually, they were confirmed cases because they touch the packaging of a seafood or the frozen food, especially the people that actually work for the cold chain sector. And also we actually encourage people to cook well these kind of the frozen food. And also we have a holistic approach laid out in this method. We talk about COVID-19 pandemic of the century is currently weakening the further progress of our human being, and also once again realize that the world actually is a global community of shared future. So the virus respects no borders and no race. No one can stay immune from this virus. So under this context, we should work together to build a community of future for mankind and build a strong synergy to defeat the pandemic. I believe TCM can play a larger role. Right now, we don't have the significant or the magic bullet, but we have TCM. Before the vaccine available, I believe TCM can play its strong role because it's already approved in our practice in China. I believe that also gives us strong confidence and further promote the role of TCM. Thank you all.
Thank you, Academician Zhang Boli, for your wonderful report. With his rich experiences in using TCM to fight against COVID-19, systemic theory and practical performance in prevention and treatment of the epidemic, he explained how traditional Chinese medicine plays a key role in the fight against COVID-19 and how it contributes to China's fight against COVID-19. Thank you again. Now, let's give a big round of applause to welcome the Nobel laureates in chemistry, Mr. Michael Levitt, for his Michael speech. Michael Levitt is a professor of structural biology and director of the Levitt Laboratory at Stanford University. He's a member of the National Academy of Sciences in the United States and vice president of Association of the World's Leading Scientists. He has done in-depth and pioneering research in the structural biology, computational biology, DNA, and protein molecular dynamics. He started his work on the developing multi-scale modules of complex chemical systems and bridging the gap between classical and quantum physics, and also he won the 2013 Nobel Prize. And today he will deliver a speech through video. The title of speech is Basic Science Needed for Significant and Fundamental Discoveries and the Promotion of the Epidemic Prevention.
Michael Levitt, the Robert W. and Vivian K. Cahill Professor in Cancer Research at Stanford School of Medicine in the Department of Structural Biology, and also by courtesy in computer science. Today I'm going to talk about the question of whether basic science is needed for significant and fundamental discoveries. It's also a great pleasure for me to be talking at the World Conference for Scientific Literacy. I say this because my wife, Shoshan, who was a teacher at Peking University for 5 years, is a real expert on literacy in general, and I feel very honored to have a chance to speak about scientific literacy. My talk is going to have 5 parts. It's going to talk a little bit about a revolution in biology, computational structural biology, which is my field, applied structural biology, and then ask 2 questions. Is basic science important, and how to win many Nobel Prizes? So the revolution in biology. So in the 1950s, a small number of scientists at Cambridge in England basically redefined biology as physics. And as luck would have it, I was born in 1947. So in the 50s, I was a teenager and was very lucky to be there at this revolution. This revolution involved a number of really great scientists who ended up being my heroes of science and having a huge influence on my life. So basically, the first person I want to describe is a scientist that you may have heard of, Francis Crick. He, with James Watson, was the person who proposed a model for the structure of DNA. This is the helical model that you see here. He did this in 1953 in a very, very famous paper in Nature. The next person, and actually what I wanted to say is, in this model, Crick showed that the genetic information is encoded by about 30 atoms in 4 different kinds of groups, nucleotides, that go along with this double helix. The next person I want to mention was also at the same laboratory in Cambridge, Professor John Kendrew, and he first worked out the first 3-dimensional structure of a protein. A protein is much, much more complicated than the simple double helix of DNA. Every protein looks different. This is a small part of the protein myoglobin, and in fact, it was important to publish this in Scientific American because you could have colored pictures. Back in those times, other journals didn't have colored pictures. The third person is perhaps most important, but perhaps least well known, Max Perutz. All of these people have Nobel Prizes. In fact, they all got Nobel Prizes in the same year, 1962. Max Perutz really was the hero of structural biology because he was the person who provided John Kendrew with a method that he used to solve the structure of myoglobin. Even more importantly, when Francis Crick was working on the structure of DNA, he was actually a PhD student of Max Perutz. But the really important paper is Watson and Crick. Perutz's name is not on the paper, showing how in those days there was huge emphasis on giving young, upcoming scientists independence. And you'll hear more about this in my talk on scientific literacy. So essentially, crystallography gives structure, but for molecules to function, they need to move. So how do we get movement? We basically get function by movement, and this is where I come in a field called computational structural biology. The story starts, for me, in 1963. John Kendrew actually had a huge influence on my life, essentially by chance. He won the Nobel Prize together with Max Perutz in 1962, and immediately he made a television series on the BBC that started in January, 4th of January, 1964. And this BBC television series was called The Thread of Life, an Introduction to Molecular Biology. Now, this series is actually quite high level. It could be an introductory course to modern molecular biology with the revolution in biology, inside the cell, proteins in 1 dimension, proteins in 3 dimensions, genetics, etc. But it was actually on television. And in those days, all countries only had a single television channel. Now, how did this influence me? I was born in South Africa and then came to England when I was 16 in November 1963 for a vacation. As soon as I saw television, which I'd never seen before, I was immediately addicted to television and watched everything. And for great fortune, I started to watch the series by John Kendrew and kept on watching. In fact, I was so
enthralled with it that I decided not to go back to South Africa, but to stay in England and continue my studies there. In any case, I stayed in England, went to university in London to study physics, King's College in London, and then in 1967, towards the end of my degree in physics, I wrote to John Kendrew and asked if I could come to Cambridge to do a PhD there. He wrote back, sorry, we're full. Now again, I was very lucky because I have friends who ended up studying physics but becoming businessmen, and they immediately said to me, in business, if somebody says no, you don't accept it, you make a counter offer. This I did. The counter offer was that can I come the year after? This seemed to work. I went up to Cambridge, I was interviewed, I met Crick, I met Perutz, I was in heaven. In the end, it turned out that Kendrew would only accept me the year after if I went to Israel. Now, why did Kendrew want to send me to Israel in 1967? The reason is that he realized that inside proteins, there were simple chemical groups. This is the structure of myoglobin. You can see a 5-membered ring. You can see a methyl group. Here's the structure of lysozyme that was solved in 1966, benzene group, and so on. So he realized that I should go and learn about how the forces work in small molecules. And to do that, I had to go to Israel to work with a man called Shneur Lifson. Shneur Lifson, shown here as he looked in 1968, was working with his PhD student, Aryeh Varshil, and they were working on computer models for very, very simple molecules, quite small molecules, methane, ethane, cyclohexane, and so on. And they were trying to calculate the properties of these molecules and then compare with experiment. They needed somebody who would write the computer program for them. This I did, and I wrote a computer program in 1967-68 that would allow you to calculate the energy of any small molecule. Basically, I then, at the same time, also worked on the same program. I found that it could also be used to calculate the energy of a whole protein, something we call protein energy minimization. In my first paper that I wrote with Lifson at the age of 21, we basically showed that you could take an energy function, a mathematical function for the energy of a protein, essentially treating the protein as spheres, balls and sticks interacting, and get the energy. Anyway, this ended up being my first paper, and it ended up being the first in a series of 3 papers in what was called by the Nobel Committee multi-scale modeling of macromolecules. So basically, in 1975, I went back to Israel after doing my PhD in Cambridge. We worked on what are called coarse-grained models. These are models where you basically eliminate many of the atoms to make a simplified chain, which can then be used to make the chain fold up. At the same time, a year later, again with Aryeh Varshil, we did mixed quantum mechanics and molecular mechanics to make models that could be used for catalysis. So essentially, we basically made models that were both simpler and more complicated. This led to multi-scale modeling in proteins, and this is what eventually, about 45 years later, led to us going to Sweden. So basically, my basic scientific research is essentially all basic science. I've been very lucky. Most of my life, I worked at research institutes or in the United States in medical schools, where I did have to teach, but my teaching load was really very, very small, and my main occupation was to do basic science research. That, of course, is basic science of any value? Now, some people say that it's impossible to think of something in basic science that will not be of value. And the example that they often give is the factorization of numbers. So 15, we all know, equals 5 times 3. And 21 equals 7 times 3. And 25 equals 5 times 5. It turns out that if the number is small, it's very easy to find out what the factors are. But if you have a number that is very, very big, imagine a number with 1,000 digits and ask which 2 numbers multiply to give that number, that is something which is very, very hard to do. This was shown to be very hard to do by Euler, a mathematician, a Swiss mathematician in the 1700s. And basically, this piece of very applied, pure mathematics ends up being the secret to coding in WeChat Pay, in all the world's banking. So something which seemed to be very, very pure basic science ends up having massive applications. Similar thing was true for me, and I want to say a little bit about my own experiences in applied structural biology. So this involves a field of antibodies. Antibodies are molecules that basically recognize all foreign molecules that enter our body. Antibodies are now very important in the discussions of COVID-19 because we're looking for antibodies that will recognize the virus, and when the virus comes, will attack the virus and stop the virus infecting our bodies. Now, antibodies are shown here schematically as a hand with 3 fingers. That's one antibody, and normally 2 of these come together like that. This is a model for an antibody, and these fingers have different shapes. Now, how does the protein do it? Here we have an example of the 6 fingers recognizing an apple. That would be a shape like this, but they might have a shape like this or a shape like this. So how do proteins achieve this? So each antibody, each object like this, consists of 2 chains, 1, 2, and each chain is a chain of amino acids, about 120 amino acids, and each chain has 3 loops. Here's 1 loop, 2 loops, 3 loops. One chain is called the light chain, one chain is called the heavy chain, and then these 6 loops come together. Now, in 1987, colleagues in Cambridge understood how these loops give rise to the different shapes. And as a result, we wrote papers together, Levitt, that were published in Nature and Science, showing how we could predict the shapes of these loops, and this would actually then be confirmed by experimentalists. But this was very basic science. It was not in any way meant to be applied. But then in 1967, I moved from the Weizmann Institute to Stanford, and Stanford has always been a university that tries to encourage outreach, tries to encourage interaction between industry and science. So I was encouraged to join a startup company called Protein Design Lab. This startup company had as one of its founders Carrie Queen, and they were very interested in antibody structure. So I used my computer program to make a model of a particular antibody for them. And this ended up being very important. Now, why was this important? The reason this is important is that the antibody was an antibody that binds a molecule, a receptor, on the surface of cancer cells. So this is an antibody that doesn't recognize COVID, it recognizes cancer cells. Now, this could be potentially a great therapy for cancer because we could take those antibodies, inject them into a human being with cancer, and the antibody would then attack the cancer cells. The trouble is that you make antibodies, at least in those days, by injecting the cancer cells into a mouse or a rabbit. You then take the antibodies from the mouse and the rabbit, and you can make them. The trouble is that antibodies from mouse or rabbits are not good for us. We think they're foreign. So what we need to do is take the antibody from the mouse or rabbit and humanize it to make it more like a human antibody. This is something that's done in the computer. It was first done by Greg Winter, also from Cambridge, where I studied, who got the Nobel Prize a couple of years ago. And the idea is that you take the fingers, the loops, from the mouth, this is shown here. You take the body, the hand, from human, and you graft them together, and you make an antibody which has most from human, and the fingers that recognize the anti-cell, the cancer cell, here. Now, it turns out if you actually look at a model, this is the model that I actually made for them, you find that the red loops are actually not sticking out like fingers, they're actually more bent over. So the red loops touch the white body in many places, and you need to make changes in the interface. That's what Queen postulated. He said, in order to make a good antibody, we take the fingers from the mouse, we take the body from the human, and in between we make changes. This turned out to be a better way of making antibodies. They patented their method. Because the methods were patented, large pharmaceutical companies invest in the patents. They invested, the company Genentech, that later became Roche, invested very, very heavily in manufacturing these very expensive antibodies. But in the end, these ended up being very important antibody therapies for drugs. These names are well known to people who have been very unfortunate to have somebody that they know have cancer, Herceptin, Avastin. Now, what I'm showing here is the amount of money that went to Protein Design Lab from their patents. And basically in 2012, they were getting $400 million just from the royalties, from doing nothing. Having made the patent 23 years before, they got the money. So for me, this showed that very basic research, if you wait long enough, can have massive human health implications. So this was just the key idea, and I've shown that before. Okay. So basically, I have been very lucky, had a wonderful life in basic science. I still work, I still love science. Perhaps I work too hard, especially since I became very involved in work on coronavirus since the 26th of January. But really, I have had a wonderful life in basic science. So you need to ask, has this been a useful life? Is basic science useful? Do we still need new basic science, or can we simply apply the ideas we have? And this is very important because some countries have a very strong reputation in basic science, others have less. So basically, is basic science important? Is basic science important? Think about that. So basically, what is basic science in biomedicine, but anywhere? So good basic science must enable future work. It must be something that allows people to continue to work. And it must also be something totally unexpected, because if it wasn't totally unexpected, it could have been developed from other things. So this is interesting, because doing things that are totally unexpected is very hard to predict. And I'll say more about this. So here are some examples of basic science in medicine. The sequence of proteins and DNA. The structure of DNA. This is what Crick did. The structure of proteins. This is what was pioneered by John Kendrew. Monoclonal antibodies. This is the way to make antibodies in cells. When you get the antibodies from the mouse, you now want to make many of them. How do you do that? And there's a trick to do that. The structure of the key components of life. RNA polymerase, ribosomes. And finally, gene editing. And this CRISPR allows us to edit the genes. And this, in fact, was the most recent Nobel Prize awarded this year. So these are all examples of good basic science. And in fact, every one of these has a Nobel Prize attached to it. Now, the thing about science is that basic science, and forgive me for missing out the E, is serendipity. What does serendipity mean? It's a word that actually has a very strange origin. It comes from a story written in Italy, in Venice, in 1557. It's a story about three princes of Serendip. They were lucky and smart. Isn't enough to be smart, it isn't enough to be lucky. Being lucky and smart is very important. Now, Serendip is actually a place. Where is Serendip? Serendip is at the very end of India. The small island at the end of India called Sri Lanka used to be called Serendip in earlier times. So now what do we mean by serendipity? A scientific discovery is like winning a lottery. Now, this means it's very hard to be planned or predicted, but there are certain things you can do. So, for example, if you never buy a ticket to a lottery, you'll never win. And if you buy more than one ticket, you have a higher chance of winning. Now, these are very simple rules, but it's not always easy to explain to a minister of science that the great discoveries are going to happen by chance. Unfortunately, we have seen time and time again that when people say don't work on something, then very often the next big discovery comes from that area. So there's a huge element of chance in basic science. Now, is basic science important? So one problem with science is that it's very hard to tell who did what. Oftentimes, people who do the discovery are quite shy, are quite restrained. They don't advertise their work. Ambitious scientists often try to bury the work of others. So it's actually quite difficult to estimate the value of basic science without really knowing the field well and intimately. So I'm going to take the easy way out and rely on the Nobel Committee. The Nobel Committee, of all the different prizes, the Nobel Committee take more care than any other committee. 6 scientists or 7 scientists meet, and they meet in person every 2 weeks in Sweden. Maybe this is one of the reasons why Sweden didn't lock down, but they meet in person, they never use email, and they use phone calls that are basically encrypted. So they're very, very scared that anyone will understand what they're going to do. And they've been doing this for the last 121 or 122 years. So we have a record. We can say Einstein got the Nobel Prize and so on. It's the longest living prize. So what has been the record of Nobel Prizes? So I'm going to look just in the USA, in medicine, and ask how many of the Nobel Prizes in medicine came from universities, and how many of them came from medical schools or research institutions. Now remember, in universities, the researchers are actually working. They are doing teaching as well as their science. In basically, scientists who work in medical schools or research institutes, like I worked in, are only doing basic science. And you see that there are generally, in the last 50 years, from 1970 onwards, there are more Nobel Prizes in America won by scientists who actually work on science full-time. That's the point I'm trying to make. Teaching is very important. Basic science is very important, and often we do the two together. Here in China, the Chinese Academy of Science is pure basic science. People working in universities have to spend time teaching. Now, there can be payoffs from that. If you spend time teaching, you might get better students, but still, certainly in America, people working in medical schools or in pure research institutes have won more Nobel Prizes. So basically, basic scientists in US medical schools and research institutes win more medical Nobel Prizes than other US scientists. Now let's ask, what about the USA versus the rest of the world? The USA is known to have been really preeminent in Nobel Prizes, but if you look at the history, what we see is that early on, before about 1940, the rest of the world, shown here in red, won more Nobel Prizes than the USA. This is particularly marked early on, but basically until 1950, the USA was not winning more Nobel Prizes than the rest of the world. By the 60s, the USA was winning significantly more Nobel Prizes than the rest of the world, and this continued until most recently, when the USA is now winning slightly fewer Nobel Prizes. So we see that countries can win Nobel Prizes because of geopolitical changes. Just to show this, not just for the medical prizes, but for all the prizes, we see exactly the same thing. If we look at all the science prizes, there are many more Nobel Prizes if we include physics and chemistry. Exactly the same trend is seen. So basically, it may seem that in the last 10 years or so, the USA is actually losing its advantage and other countries are starting to win Nobel Prizes, but the difference is not very large. But it also shows that a big disruptive event, like the Second World War, actually had a major, major role in getting the USA. This is when the Second World War was. Before the Second World War, the USA had very few Nobel Prizes. After the Second World War, it had many Nobel Prizes. Now, how do you win Nobel Prizes? So we need to ask, how much do different countries spend on science? And the answer is a huge amount of money. This is actually 5 years old, but 5 years ago, the United States was spending about $500 billion a year on its research. China, about half of that. Japan, about a third of that. Germany, about a fifth of that, and so on. For scale, this is the size of the International Space Station as a circle, the Apollo program, and the Manhattan Project that led to atomic bombs. So countries spend a great deal on their science. On the other hand, the United States and other countries seem to get more Nobel Prizes. So getting Nobel Prizes is not simply a question of spending more money. We can see that here. Some countries, like the United Kingdom, get one Nobel Prize for about a $13 billion investment. For Germany, it's 4 times more. For Holland, it's more. But China really hasn't had many Nobel Prizes and is spending very much. Now, that should not be a surprise, because it takes about 40 years for Nobel Prize winning work to be recognized. So in some ways, the number of Nobel Prizes today are a measurement of where Chinese science was 40 years ago. And obviously, it's changed very, very much. We do see that, by and large, there is a relationship between how much you spend and how many Nobel Prizes you have, but there are countries that fall off the line. You see here. Okay. So now let me ask finally, how do you win many Nobel Prizes? And this might sound like a joke, because I don't think anyone would want to have many Nobel Prizes for themselves, but I really mean for a country. What do you have to do to win many Nobel Prizes? Okay. So you clearly need quality scientific research, you need money, and you need a full-time research commitment. It's easier if you have a full-time research commitment. It's not everything, but having people who have research institutes has been very important. So what else is needed? And I'm going to look at two places that have won many Nobel Prizes. There are two World Nobel Prize centers. One is the Rockefeller University in New York City, and the other is the Medical Research Council Laboratory of Molecular Biology in Cambridge. Both of these places have won more than 20 Nobel Prizes. Other places have done very well as well, the ETH in Zurich and so on. But, you know, I'm not doing an exhaustive check. I'm looking at two places that I noticed. So let's first look at the Rockefeller University. It's a beautiful campus in New York City, right in the middle of downtown Manhattan. This is the campus. And there are the Nobel Prizes. And the Nobel Prizes at the Rockefeller University started in 1912, and I'm not sure if this is the last one, but they basically got 24 Nobel Prizes over the last 100 years. A very important achievement. I didn't study at the Rockefeller University. I visited there. I have friends whom I know who have got Nobel Prizes. But a place that I do know is the Medical Research Council Laboratory of Biology in Cambridge. This is the building, Medical Research Council Laboratory of Molecular Biology, LMB, in Cambridge. A small building. When I was there, my office was about here. It's now become very famous. They made a huge building. It looks like a shopping mall maybe in China with very high ceilings and so on, but a beautiful building. But all the discoveries happened here. Now, how many Nobel Prizes did they get? So basically, people who actually either worked at the Medical Research Council or visited, so far actually have 28 Nobel Prizes. Not in the last 100 years, but in the last 60 years, from 1958 to 2000. So that's a relatively short period, about 60 years, 65 years. They've gotten almost 30 Nobel Prizes. Now, these Nobel Prizes include many of the people that I mentioned. I was very lucky that these people were my heroes and scientists. Many people visited, but there's been this huge number of Nobel Prizes. Now, what was their secret? So let me just say something about the winners. Francis Crick, DNA structure, somebody whom I worked with for 2 years and a really great scientist. Fred Sanger. Fred Sanger actually got 2 Nobel Prizes in the same field. One in 1958 for finding out how you sequence proteins. There's another one 22 years later in 1980 for sequencing DNA and RNA. John Kendrew, who had the most influence on my life by sending me to Israel, solved the structure of proteins. Cesar Milstein is somebody new. He was the person who invented monoclonal antibodies. This is a way to get cells from mice in which you can grow any number of antibodies you want. And all antibody therapy today, whether it's vaccines, depends on having these cells who will make antibodies. Now, he discovered these cells, and he did something interesting. He wanted to see whether these cells might be commercially useful. So he said, let's patent it. Well, the Medical Research Council studied the issue, and after having a committee study it, they came back and said, no, this is not worth patenting. Well, in retrospect, this would have been worth many, many hundreds of billions of dollars for patenting. So sometimes patenting is a good idea. Basically, what is the recipe for Nobel Prizes? In Cambridge, an average group gets about $1.5 million in support. In Cambridge, at least when I was there is no visible bureaucracy. Anyone who wanted supplies just went to the storeroom and asked for it. I'm not sure what it's like now, but certainly in my time, if I had wanted a laptop computer, there weren't any, I would have gone to the stores and said, I want a laptop computer. They would say, okay, what color do you want? Here it is. There would be no limitation. Small groups, never more than about 5 people in a group. Very strong pressure from your peers. You're only as good as your next paper. And no real hierarchy. The students feel as good as the Nobel laureates. So basically, in summary, I've told you about the revolution in biology, computational structural biology, making molecules move, is bioscience important, and how to win many Nobel Prizes. I'd like to thank you all for your attention. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Professor Michael Levitt, for your excellent report. Now let's welcome the ACO of the Malaysian Academy of Science, Madam Hazami Habib. Her report is titled Malaysia Amidst the Pandemic, Connecting, Communicating and Supporting. Let's welcome Madam Hazami Habib.
In 2020, the China Association for Science Technology for inviting the Academy of Sciences Malaysia to deliver the keynote speech. We are very honored to be here virtually together with the eminent lineup of speakers today. The year 2020 shows that COVID-19 touches every part of life around the globe, and it is important that we understand the science of our new realities and have an informed citizen at all levels, be it a leader, politicians, policymakers, teachers, students, and public at large. Never in a modern time have we seen such an overwhelming demonstration of the need for science literacy. Science literacy comes to put public awareness in place so that public engagement and empowerment can bring about needed changes for the community to live with the virus. Today, I will be sharing our experience in communicating to our stakeholders on COVID-19 in helping Malaysians to understand the crisis. As the thought leader in science, technology, innovation, and communication is one of our core business to our stakeholder, we embark our efforts to promote science literacy as one of the pandemic new norms through collaborative with government with the objective to make the information available, communicated and publicized at national and regional level. This year, Academy is celebrating our 25th anniversary and among the youngest academy in the world. We are an independent statutory body reporting to the Parliament through the Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation. We champion science excellence, science literacy towards enhancing scientific capacity and literacy of the country. We do a lot of policy studies and engagement to communicate science to our stakeholder. We are battling a deadly pandemic, and this is numbers at a glance on COVID-19 in Malaysia. We are in conditional movement control order since 14 October until 6 December, and our government will evaluate the situation and make decisions based on the analysis by the expert. Before this, we had gone through total lockdown for about 3 months from March to June. As you can see, government need to come up with a new SOP for different sectors like schools, offices, factory, public places, and these need science literacy to make an informed decision that is safe and effective for the public. What I mean by science here is not limited to natural science, but all domains of knowledge where intellectual deliberation occur and evidence is sought after. We have over 800 experts coming from 8 disciplines, and all of them are actively involved in all of our activities. There are the authority or the academia in their field and always being sought after by government, industry, and public nationally and internationally. One of the most active groups in the Academy is the Young Scientist Network, whereby the members are all under 40 years old. This is a chapter under the Academy. As you can see here, the activities very much in line with towards science at media, science communications, science policy, and science education to reach out to the public, especially the young generation, to increase their interest in STEM. These are how we operate. Our academy is governed by a council, and we will form committees and task forces chaired by our experts, fellows, and we have 6 main activities. One of our main activities is science communication that repackage all other activities and use all the inputs from our studies, activities, etc., and organize programs or publications to communicate our findings, ideas, facts to our stakeholders. We do our enculturation process in STEM in 3 phases. At preschool and primary school, the communication approach is more towards awareness, so it must be more simple, interactive, and start nurturing their curiosity to explore, understand, and learn. At secondary school, we focus more facts, understanding the concept, and ultimately, our objective is for all Malaysian and public at large to be more engaged using the science knowledge in their everyday life and building the culture of science in our society. We need to nurture our young generation in this process to have 100% science literate and engaged society. At Academy, we have several special interest groups and task forces in emerging technologies and issues. During the pandemic, we formed 2 groups on COVID-19 and zoonosis. And all these groups working together and feed all the information needed and vet through all information that we want to communicate to our stakeholders. We use multi-pronged approach. First, coming from a scientific literate group, we communicate by using our science inquiry skills and science understanding to reach out through our communication program and initiative to write and communicate to our stakeholder and public at large on COVID-19 topics. Second, we train our scientists to be mentor or train our science teachers to use the inquiry-based science education, IBSE, to encourage them to write, read, and listen to all our programs, participate in our competitions, to enhance their science inquiry skills, to be more creative and innovative towards science literacy society. So most of our activities during pandemic is using these approaches to our stakeholders. Our activities in communicating is planned by our corporate relations and science communication. We communicate through all our platforms such as publications, newsletter, national print media, electronic media, social media, press releases, brand events, report and position papers, journals, infographic, videos, etc. We have 6 communication strategies that we use in Academy. First is we need to know our audience and target, then only we package our communication plan. Second, we have to have a clear info facts that is easy to understand by public using a layman's word. Third is we repackage our work based on the audience and target group. For instance, if the communication is targeted to the policymakers, most of our write-ups, the way we present is using the policy words. Fourth, effective writing style. We have a group of writers in the Academy that write effectively to attract public for them to understand. In this way, we use the right keywords to attract them, for them to start reading our communication materials. Fifth is timely, credible, and evidence-based. As an academy, we should base all our information on evidence, and as an academy, we have to ensure it is credible, and we should broadcast it timely in order to fulfill the needs of the public. And 6, sustain and amplify our engagement. We will monitor all our communication programs and we will sustain and amplify it from time to time to ensure it is sustainable and continuously the public can rely on Academy's communication plan for them to get an informed information on COVID-19. Our target group during COVID-19 or all our programs in the Academy are policymakers, researchers and scientists, education, international and public. Let us see under policymakers. We have a lot of mainstream media, premium television, forum, whereby we bring our experts and start to have this discussion on COVID-19, be it in our own language, Bahasa Malaysia, or in English. We also bring international experts to our national TV for them to share. And this is where we reach out to all our parliamentarians, policymakers, for them to understand and start benchmarking of all the good practices that has been done outside Malaysia. We also go to national television. This is where we target all the current topics that we have for understanding of the public, and all the viewership, we will keep on monitoring it to ensure it is impactful and reaching out to the target group. This is, we also go to radio, national radio, and we also talk to all the radio DJ, for us to bring in what are the current issues that need to be delivered to the public. So we put forward all these experts in national and premium television and radio channels in giving their views and facts to the policymakers from the scientific perspective. So through this discourse, we could reach out to all policymakers discussing on strategy and action to be taken, provided with latest data, enabling them to make informed decisions. By having this on the various media platforms, we are also reaching out to the public so they have better understanding on the situation and increase their awareness on this pandemic. We monitor our outreach for each engagement, and to date, we have achieved 52 million media reach. As an academy, we monitor where we are in science and technology, and one of the pillars that we are monitoring closely is science literacy and engagement. One of our recommendations is to increase the interest of our students in STEM. This is our biannual report, and so far, 80% of our recommendations has been taken up by the government. So not only we increase the awareness of science to the public, we are also providing input for the government in making policy in place. We are members in several national committees, so we are very much involved directly and having first-hand information through our ministry. Through these committees, we gave our experts' view for the policymakers and ministries to make an informed decision and help government in communicating to the public on all new standard operating procedure that was developed by government. This is important to make public understand the science behind it and get better cooperation by public. When the understanding is there, the outcome is more promising, and we keep on showing the progress. So as you can see, science literacy just not go to the young generations or public. We also need science literacy towards policymakers. This will ensure all actions taken is well understood from the scientific perspective, and all Malaysians understood to achieve the shared vision of the government in combating the pandemic. Let us see how do we reach out to researchers and scientists. These are some examples of fellows think pieces, how we do our webinar series throughout 2020. And we also have this new initiative called Malaysian Open Science Platform for COVID-19 as a satellite project under this initiative. So all these several initiatives conducted by Academy, we prepare a position paper on COVID-19 as part of our efforts in providing the necessary STI recommendation that could assist the government in addressing the current COVID-19 crisis and also for the future preparedness on matters pertaining to the infectious disease. Preparations of the policy papers on zoonosis to help the government in charting the future planning and direction in mitigating any emerging and re-emerging of zoonotic disease through science, technology, innovation could be embarked. Coordinating and strategizing research focus area to accelerate the search for vaccines and therapeutic surveillance and prediction also is one of our initiatives, working hand in hand as a researcher and scientist with the government. So we also encourage collaboration and sharing research data through Malaysian Open Science Platform repository for COVID-19. This is where we also do science literacy among researchers and scientists for them to start sharing their data and collaborate to ensure that our research can be expedited and the result, we can fetch it faster. A data repository COVID-19 centric for sharing unpublished scientific data and data sets, publications and report produced by Malaysian scientists. So we hope with this, more collaboration of research among Malaysian researchers could be embarked during this pandemic seasons. Next is education. This is another target group that Academy focus very much because this is very important. This year, for the first time, we organized the first virtual National Science Challenge. Before this, since 1987, we have been organizing this National Science Challenge nationally to all secondary schools in Malaysia. So this year, because of the pandemic, it does not stop us. We still organize this competition through our virtual platform. And very good response. We have around 1,027 schools participate in these competitions. We also do a lot of online reaching out lecture series by our young scientists, and all these programs, the National Science Challenge and all this, is broadcasted at our National Education Channel in collaboration with the Ministry of Education. The Academy also active at ASEAN Regional Platform. We are the secretariat of two ASEAN programs. One is ASEAN Foresight Alliance, and another one is ASEAN Young Scientist Network. Through these two platforms, we actively working hand in hand with ASEAN to organize a workshop on training young scientists and policymakers to do foresighting on ASEAN, example on COVID-19 pandemic and or similar pandemic. Next, we also encourage through our ASEAN Young Scientist Network for our young scientists to do collaborative research on COVID-19. So this is how we communicate to our regional partners, regional young scientists, in order to get also to increase science literacy and science engagement among young scientists in ASEAN. Next, we are also actively supporting the inter-academy partnership statements on COVID-19 pandemic, and we are also actively supporting the World Academy of Science statement on COVID-19. This is how we involve, and through all the information that we get from the international, we bring back to Malaysia and we share it public to our public. Let's see how do we approach public in our science communication program to increase literacy on COVID-19. One of the most popular program in Academy is Fascinate series. This is where we bring our fellows to give a TED Talk style lecture to reach out to the public to talk about current issues. So through this, we just introduced this last year and this year, and we have accumulated around 21,000 views online through our YouTube channel. Next is, we also do a lot of COVID-19 research studies fact sheet, whereby we publish this weekly during the lockdown, and this helped very much, especially when we publish this in our own national language. We can see the total reach of 149,000, and most of the schools, organizations download this and print it to be shared at their community or their colleague and peers, and this has a very good impact and reach out for us to give science literacy among our public, students, teachers, workers on how to follow the SOP and to understand to curb this pandemic in the community. We also go towards opening a TikTok accounts in Academy to reach out to the young generation and to give a short, simple message about COVID-19, and so far it has been given a very good response from public of all this reach out of communication plan that we have. We use all sort of platforms, name it social media, and the latest platform like TikTok. We go to the national TV, radio, print newspaper, so on and so forth. Even we present this to the policymakers in order to make the information available for them and for them to make an informed decision and for public to have a greater understanding on this pandemic. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, this is our experience in Malaysia, and we hope with this sharing session, it also we can work together with other academy in the world, especially with CAS or any other organization from all the countries that participate in this conference, and we hope with this approach we can move forward and fight this pandemic and we can win this war. Okay, last but not least, my key takeaway for all the participants here is we people need to learn, unlearn, relearn, co-learn and co-create science and continue communicating it to public towards achieving scientific literacy and knowledgeable society. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Hazami Habib, for your report. Now I would like to invite Mr. Edward Manipas to give a keynote speech. So he is a chairman of the board of the directors of the Association of Engineering Architects and Graduates in Technological Science in Israel, and the topic is Post-Pandemic World, the Essentials for Growth and Innovation.
Distinguished panel members, distinguished delegates, it's a real pleasure to address the World Conference on Science Literacy under the auspices of the Chinese Association for Science and Technology. I would like to talk about the post-pandemic world. I'll talk about the VUCA pandemic responses at the national, regional, and individual level. I would like, with your permission, to dedicate this particular presentation to a family relative, Professor George Sharpak, who passed away 10 years ago. He's a Nobel Prize laureate in physics for 1992. He got his Nobel Prize as a single laureate for his invention of the multi-wire proportional chamber, which you can see the picture down in here. His history is a rich history. During World War II, he was part of the French resistance, deported to the Dachau concentration camp until its liberation in 1945. Professor George Sharpak developed his IP that was used in biology, medicine, space exploration, earthquake prediction, large particle accelerators. He is a co-founder of CERN. Most important for us, he's developed special programs for science literacy for young children and young adults. An interesting anecdote: upon receiving the prize money, he was asked what he's going to do with this amount of money, and he said he's going to buy a pair of shoes this afternoon, but he doesn't have time for that, whereupon he started to receive many pairs of shoes from all around the world. The VUCA conditions is something that we've all experienced over the last year or so. The VUCA conditions were identified by a mentor of mine who was the president of my university during my doctoral studies, Professor Wang. The VUCA conditions basically say conditions of vulnerability, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, which we all experienced, as I said, during the pandemic. Under these conditions, the appropriate response is clear and concise communication of policies. I suggest to you the use of resilient, holistic, and multidimensional paradigm. One of them I'm going to use for this presentation today. Innovation in new processes, service, products, and practices. Simplifying entry regulations and supporting scaling up initiatives. And prepare for the next pandemic wave. And we do that at all levels, the national, regional, and individual levels. The question that we should ask ourselves, what is the essence of the lessons learned from the COVID-19 pandemic? For that, I have to turn to the national surveys we've conducted recently. And we found out that out of all the people that were asked, 81% adopted a healthier lifestyle, better hygiene, more sleep, better diet, more physical activities, less time in traffic for academics, etc. 88% of the population went online, buys online food and drugs. 49% work from home. Over 50% turned to city and regional government. This is essential to our understanding of the COVID-19 issue. The regional government, city governments, municipal governments become essential in helping us get out of the crisis. I'll get back to that in a moment. 49% prefer online health services such as lab tests, delivery of medicine, doctor visits at home, home medical advice, physical education, and most appropriate for us in here, 25% increase in appreciation of science literacy and academic education, and 33% are convinced that the COVID-19 will cause higher rate of science literacy. We turn now to some infographics and we can look into some lessons learned from this particular national survey. Here are the things that should be maintained and have positive impact as a result of the COVID-19. Family time, online literacy and use, appreciate what you have, and hygiene. Things that need improvement: health, economic security, happiness, future national prospects. I would like to underline online literacy and use, economic security, and future national prospects. If I have to summarize all those insights from which I have to present to you some solutions, I'd like to suggest the following adage. For self-sufficiency and self-reliance, which seems to be most important lessons learned, turn to technology and science. So let's turn now to at the national level. We know that almost all SICs, all industries, have gone through some major restructuring. Health, medical care, education, commerce, government, banking services, food, gardening, garden supplies, pets, pet supplies, real estate, housing, and for sure the issue of tourism, hoteling, and travel. All kinds of technology was used, all kinds of science were manipulated in order to come up with a better performance, better productivity. But in order to understand what to do, I think we can use some kind of a holistic presentation, such as this particular econometric model that relates framework conditions to job creation, socio-economic development, and value added, with intervening variables down in here. The national framework conditions could be defined, as you can see in here, entrepreneurial education at school stage, post-school stage R&D transfer, commercialization, that is, commercial and legal infrastructure, internal market dynamics, internal market burdens, entry regulations, physical infrastructures, culture and social norms, entrepreneurial finance, government policies regarding taxes, bureaucracy, relevance, and entrepreneurship. All these framework conditions could be related somehow to the outcome that I've suggested and could be measured in countries around the world. We do these measurements over the last 22 years or so on an annual basis in the continents and countries marked in here. 95% of the GDP is being sampled, but 75% of the world population is being sampled. We can look for all kinds of measures, but I'm suggesting some kind of overall measure we can use as a dashboard, and we can identify the benchmarks, and then we can identify which country we can adopt best practices from. I'm just suggesting to you that China, United States, and Israel are getting these particular rankings, but obviously there are some countries that do a better job than others. As I said, benchmarks are important, so we can now understand the best practices that we should possibly consider for adoption. I'm humbled to suggest something for the great Chinese economy, but I'm suggesting to you that these particular items marked in red, all 6 of them, could be improved in order to further enhance the Chinese economy. I understand from reports that the Chinese economy is now operating already at the 90% level compared to the pre-COVID-19 crisis. The regional level, as I said, becomes crucial in helping us get out of crisis. Again, there are all kinds of paradigms we can use. I'm suggesting this one in here, whereby some framework conditions and systemic conditions are related to outcomes such as productivity, income, employment, and well-being. I'd like to suggest to you that in several countries, the level of productivity is now almost back to normal, and including in our country, for basically attesting to the fact that we deal with the ramifications of COVID-19 quite successfully. The productivity in my country, at least, is reaching almost pre-COVID-19 levels, which speaks highly for the way we deal regionally with the challenges of the COVID-19. Again, we can use all kinds of measures. I'm suggesting one measure that I've used and was published as part of the GEM report, the Regional Entrepreneurial Ecosystem Index. I've indicated those particular ranks for the different localities, regions in here: Barcelona, Madrid, Montreal, Abu Dhabi, Bratislava, Cairo, Tel Aviv, Riyadh, Sao Paulo, and we can compare and contrast those for benchmarking purposes, and again ask ourselves which best practices at the regional level we can adopt. The individual becomes key in order to get out of crisis. I'm suggesting to you again that there are all kinds of paradigms you can use. This one appears in the latest reports. It looks into a process from a new venture to owner-managed business, with all kinds of intervening variables, and again, there are all kinds of measures we can use in order to compare and contrast. This particular measure of the total early stage entrepreneurial rate for various countries, I've noticed just for this presentation, China compared to Israel, and we are very similar level, as you can see. I urge you, members from other countries, delegates from other countries, to find yourself on this particular presentation and decide which economies you would like to use in order to adopt best practices. We can do the same for other measures like comparing gender issues, and I'm not going to cover all of them. Please refer to the link that was presented to you. Let me summarize. The post-pandemic world should be characterized somehow with the following items. Government support for businesses and households should be used not only to restart the economy but also to help transform it. The global economy becomes less integrated, supply chains are reconfigured, and labor migration and foreign direct investments are reduced with macroeconomic implications. Specifically, the business cycle is expected to be more volatile. Furthermore, since we are experiencing the VUCA environment, here are the items that we should address: clear and concise communication of policies, resilient, holistic, and multidimensional paradigm like the one I'm suggesting in here, innovation in new processes, services, products, and practices, simplifying entry regulations and supporting scaling up initiatives, and prepare for the next pandemic wave. And we do that at the 3 levels of national, regional, and individual levels. I'd like to leave you with this adage that I'm suggesting to all of us in here based on the important lessons learned of self-sufficiency and self-reliance. For self-sufficiency and self-reliance, turn to technology and science. I thank you for your attention. It was a pleasure addressing you. Good day.
Thank you, Mr. Hood Manipad, for your speech. Now let's welcome Executive Vice President and the Chief Executive Secretary of the China Association for Science and Technology Commission of the Chinese Academy of Science, Mr. Hu Huaide, on the stage to deliver his speech entitled Efforts of Scientific Community in Combating COVID-19 in China. Let's welcome Mr. Huai on the stage.
Gentlemen,
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Very honored to attend the 2020 World Conference on Science Literacy. My topic today, actually, the host is just presenting with you. We will talk about like 3 areas. First, we will talk about how we can deal with the public crisis. And the second, we'll talk about during this epidemic. I would like to talk about the Chinese plan in fight against the COVID-19, and also I will talk about some suggestions for the future development for science literacy. Right now, the global pandemic is still accelerating. As of last week, over 65 million people around the world got infected with COVID-19, but still we have seen some promising developments. The vaccines are about to come. We're expecting that vaccines can solve all the problems, and also we believe that with the development of the epidemic, we will find out new solutions. At the beginning of the year, we were hit by COVID-19, and at that time, we think science literacy is very important for us to solve the uncertainties. Because at that time we think we do not have enough solutions and we are affected by all of the rumors. The sudden outbreak of COVID-19 hit us all. And at that time, we do not even have enough supplies, for example, the PPEs, etc. At that time, we have to stay rational, and we have to trust each other and form cooperation. Under such context, of course, we need the policymakers to give out guidance, especially guidance from the leaders. At the beginning of this year, the General Secretary and the President of China, Xi Jinping, visited Wuhan, and also he provided a lot of guidance in Beijing. With joint efforts, we have made major progress in the fight against COVID-19. During this progress, we can feel the solidarity of Chinese people. And also the science literacy is the key social cornerstone for us to end the COVID-19 crisis. When COVID-19 comes, we do see some new phenomena because we saw a lot of rumors in the society. A lot of people recommending that we have to eat vegetables to prevent the virus. Probably you could use some salty waters, and some people are saying that you could prevent the virus by smoking. Or you could use some of the sesame oil in your nose to protect against the virus. And people are very panicked and they're spreading out rumors. And at that time, the society had a lack of effective treatment and medical resources such as the mask and protective suits. And for the elderly people, they are facing a grave challenge because they don't have a smartphone. So when they're going out or seeking for medical services, they have a lot of inconveniences because of not able to use the smartphones. So in these circumstances, we need to use science or science literacy and to avoid the crisis. So we can see for the Chinese scientists, Zhong Nanshan also educate the public how to wear the facial mask, how to protect themselves against the virus. And he also advocating exercising social distancing. So all of these will help us to prevent the virus. Just now, academician Zhang Boli also said we are also using traditional Chinese medicine and Western medicine to treat the patients. Also, for the scientific workers and medical workers, they will provide scientific education to the public so that we can break all of those rumors and comfort the nerves for the general public. So during this process, the scientific workers have played a key role. So we have a variety of dissertations and they have done a lot of scientific research. And they're helping the society to better understand how to protect themselves in COVID-19 era. And also will mobilize the science-tech workers to provide psychological counseling. So they've made contributions in this regard. And we also have a very active participation of the science-tech workers in the fight against COVID-19. They're also helping us to prepare the PPEs. We always put people's safe and health as the top priority. With joint efforts, we are putting a science approach as our top priority. We develop vaccines, we also run the nucleic acid test. By doing all of that, we could comfort the nerves for the general public and stabilize the social order. And all of these efforts can also help us to curb the spread of the virus. Here, to all the scientific workers around the world, I want to emphasize that the extreme importance of the promotion of the science literacy. in China, we are rolling out a lot of scientific platforms to crack down different rumors. We want to educate the public using the scientific knowledge so the general public can get access to this knowledge and protect themselves from the virus. And we have disseminated a great number of information to the public. So we have made a lot of videos and also published a lot of dissertations and articles to educate the public. We always advocate the public to believe in the science and to stay united as one. And this is a very important weapon for us to fight against COVID-19. During our practice, we also advocating the promotion of the popularization of the science. And this has even extended to the villages and each one of the communities. So this will also help the whole society to battle against COVID-19. So right now, the epidemic has been generally contained in China. The science tech workers will also make contributions for the post-pandemic era. They've made a lot of contributions to resume the economic and the social activities. They want to use the science knowledge to better serve the society. So in general, science has played a key role for us to contain the virus and resolve the crisis. And the President Xi Jinping also sent out congratulatory letters to academicians like Mr. Zhong Nanshan. He said, we still have to stick to all those efforts to fight against the virus. We have to follow a science-based approach, seek solutions, and also encourage the general public to abide by the science-based approach and contribute to the economy of China. Because of that, because of the acknowledgement of Chinese leaders, CAST, as the largest scientific community in the world, have also made contributions to resume the economic activities in the world. From this graph, you could see it actually covers of different areas. It covers several sectors, and all of these will help to promote the science literacy to the general public. And they also provide a lot of effective policies to resolve some of the challenges that have been brought by the COVID-19. At the beginning of the epidemic, CAST has been working with the TCM Association and the Medical Association in China and sent out the first letter to the general public. They're emphasizing the importance of the science literacy. In the past few days, we are sending out 5 proposals and ask the general public to respect science, to use science-based approach to tackle the challenges. We also give full play to the science tech workers. And always we are advocating that science for policy and policy for science. So CAS also work with the science tech workers and draft a number of suggestions for policymakers so that these policies can serve the economy of China. At the same time, we attach great importance to China's strategy, and we are also communicating all of these strategies to other countries. We are trying to educate others on the experiences of China so that they can resume their economic and social activities. And also we have built up a database and asked 170 scientific journals to join the COVID-19 journal database by the WHO so that they can better attend to the challenges. We're sharing a lot of experiences in China to the other countries. And also this has been published into different languages. It has been communicated to over 22 countries. During this process, we think science literacy is very important for the general public to protect themselves. Because we do have a lot of uncertainties about this virus. We have to race with the virus, and we need science to play a key role in this endeavor.
是应对危机。
And second, we would like to say that our experience from COVID-19 is that actually science lead the way out, especially innovation is the first driving force to lead development. We talk about the transmission routes, the pathogens, and also the treatment plans, as well as the treatment with medicine, as well as the post-stage of treatment. Actually, still remain a lot of uncertainties and unknown issues, because this is a big public emergency threats in the health system. We talk about there were a lot of questions, uncertainties, unknown issues still in front of us. Actually, we always talk about we should ask science to give us the answer. So that's why we actually use the big data. We use that app to show that the green code for people for further transportation. And we talk about the PPEs. We talk about the research on the vaccines, and also the building of the makeshift hospitals. All these actually were the great lessons and also the practice China gained through our fight against COVID-19. So we talk about actually this is also hold the key for China to reach these hard-won results right now in China for curbing the coronavirus. Then we talk about actually how we really help the people to moving forward, mentally and physically. At this actually the background, there are a lot of rumors, but actually rumors very easy to be spread. So we talk about how we can better prevent the further spread of the disease as well as the rumors. There are a lot of unknown things going forward, so that also imposes a lot of new challenges to us. So the answer that should go to the sectors of scientific literacy, I believe that's a key. So during this time, China's response to COVID-19 is also the time for China to promote the scientific popularization and facilitate comprehensive development. So that also lead me to the China strategy and approach to promote scientific literacy. First, actually, you can see here, we promote the science population and help people to better improve themselves in a all-rounded manner. So we talk about the scientific popularization is just as important as S&T investment. And development actually is the first primary, and talent actually is also the third resources, and we also have the different laws and regulations in place to support the facilitation of the science population. I believe that also helped to lay the solid foundation for China to further roll out its initiatives in this regard. Over the past 2 decades, actually you can see a dramatic improvement in the scientific literacy among Chinese citizens. Right now you can see from just the less than 2% in 2001, to right now improving to the more than 10% in year 2020. Let's talk about the people's since scientific literacy, and also we look at the ratios of citizens who are successfully literate, and also the investment in the R&D, investment in the scientific popularization, all on the rise, which means actually this is a big input and investment made by the Chinese government to improve Chinese people's scientific literacy capabilities. So during the whole journey, we also actually emphasize people's lifelong learning. I believe this is very important. That's not only important to people themselves, but also important to the whole society's further development, as well as economic recovery and prosperity. We believe that we should bring everything together in terms of the scientific innovation, popularization, and also the lifelong learning in terms of the improving the scientific literacy. So we need to let the public to know more about science. So at a very young age, we talk about that we should cultivate our young kids to let them know more about the science knowledge. So we can do actually the different kinds of experiments, really let our kids to actually really hands-on to use like the wasted garbages or the recycling garbages to really know that what's the logic behind, and that not only let them to get more knowledge about science, but actually it's a very fun way to let them understand that the recycling process. We believe actually this is a very effective way to educate our young generations. And second, we should advance the scientific popularization and communication, bring science to our classrooms. So from the very young age, our kids trust and buy in all the scientific knowledge. And also we talk about the different locations, like the zoos, the parks, the laboratories in the universities. We should mobilize all these kind of the available resources to serve the public, to let them have that access to the scientific knowledge. So we talk about the museum. We also talk about the different kinds of the activities in China. Actually, we have a week of the scientific communication and promotion. On that day, we would like to increase people's awareness on the scientific popularization, and also let people to know that they should know more about science. I believe this is really crucial. So we talk about actually we should also link that to the poverty alleviation efforts in China through different associations. We would like to make our contribution to lift the people living under the poverty level to live a better life. And we look at the Mr. Li Tianlai, the academician from the Chinese Academy of Science. Actually, he's on site to teach people how to grow the potatoes. We believe actually this is a very good practice, because like the science, people think it's quite far away, but actually that really can bring all this knowledge to their working field. And then we talk about how we can better apply science, so that help us to solve the issues or the difficulties we face in the further developing our society and economy. So science can help us to find out the issues in our daily life, and also help us to understand that how we can find our way out based on science. So that's not only talk about the larger scale issues, it also can help us to find the solutions to deal with the issues or difficulties we face in our daily life. So the costs in the pandemic period really bring that the synergy between the science and economic development, and also we would like to introduce the talents, technologies to support the local regions development. So we talk about actually the post-pandemic era, we would like to see more these kind of corporations. So the entrepreneurs, the policymakers, as well as the scientists, they should work together to bring the companies, the academies, as well as the communities working even closer. So we have this platform, we have the different pools in terms of the question shooting, as well as the cooperation. So that's the we talk about this is a very good way. Actually, we can find people who are having problems and who have the solutions. And right now we have the pilot platform, as well as the projects going on. We would like to see how really a better way to bring science and economic development together. And we have the more than 130 scientific institutes work with the companies, and well as the companies to work together. So that's what we call the Innovation China platform. So this platform actually bring the 18 provinces, and also we have the 22 pilot cities have hosted the different events to produce the scientific output. And then we talk about the policy for science, so which means that the decision makers, they should understand science, and also the society give a great support to science, and also they would like to use science. So during the pandemic, we talk about the think tank actually play a key role. We talk about we have the Intelligence China platform. Actually, this give a lot of suggestions to the decision makers for the decision regarding the resumption of work, schools, as well as the psychological consulting services. I believe going forward, right now China is working on the action plans regarding the further improving the capability or preparedness of the future diseases. Crisis. I believe science can play a key role in laying out the policies and the frameworks. And also we can look at we give the suggestions from our cause to give the suggestion regarding the capability building, the focus group, or the key target group, and also the coordination between different services and also the factors and sectors. I believe we also would like to have the cooperations around the world to further drive our endeavor. Because of COVID-19, we once again know that this is a really big threat impacting people's life and work. So how science can better serve people and also lead the whole country out of this crisis. So this is actually a profound changes. So that also posed a new requirement and a new hope to our scientific community. So going forward, we need to think about what actually an effective cooperation way to unite all the peoples around the world. So we trust each other, we trust science, and also to seize opportunities and to face the challenges and to improve the scientific literacy. So we talk about the United Nations, can bring one of their topic, and also would like to see the new kinds of the platforms built so the scientists and decision makers can have a good exchanges of wills on this platform, and how they can better support the effective decision making, and how the different countries can share their development philosophies and also their learnings and experience gained in their own country. I believe this is really conducive. And the second, we should strengthen our mutual learning and communication, and also build the digital platforms as well as action plans. So we have that platform to understand each other's decision and action plans, and we also can find synergies together to make our contribution to build a community of shared future for mankind. And third, we should stick to the spirit of inclusive development and should be open-minded and eliminate the gap in scientific literacy. This gap, I believe, it is also another enemy. We talk about the global crisis in terms of climate change and COVID-19 that really need the solidarity of people around the world. I believe the scientific literacy improvement that also need the global effort. So going forward, we'd like to join hands to overcome hardship and also to achieve that win-win cooperation. So let's stay open-minded, open our arms to embrace each other, so that will help us towards a great future. Thank you.
Thank you, Academician Huai Jinpeng's speech. He brings up on the efforts made by China's achievement in the fight against COVID-19. The cast have led the science workers and devoted themselves in the fight against COVID-19 with scientific areas. They have provided a lot of popularization of the science to the rest of the world. And also they are helping to improve the science literacy so that the general public can better understand the scientific knowledge and realize the scientific efforts. And also he said we have to stay open and join hands to embrace a bright future. And also he advocated that improve the science literacy have to be included into the Sustainable Development Goal of the United Nations. Thank you for his excellent speech. Just now, the 5 guests have shared their insights with the theme of the conference. Very rewarding speeches. They share their experiences in the fight against COVID-19 from different perspectives, and they also attend to the current challenges of the pandemic and discuss how to strengthen the global cooperation in the post-pandemic era. They also advocate improving the science literacy of the public, promoting all-rounded development of the human beings and building a community with shared future for mankind. Let's give them a big applause for their wonderful reports and for sharing their wisdoms and experiences. Now I would like to announce the end of the keynote session of the 2020 World Conference on Science Literacy. Thank you.